You ever get that feeling when something in like an official story just feels a bit off?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like maybe there's this one number that just doesn't sit right and it throws off like the whole thing.
Absolutely. Like, it makes you question everything else.
Well, today we're going deep on a case. It involves RBC Royal Bank, state constables, and like this really weird discrepancy in the numbers.
Not just weird, potentially crucial.
Right. Like this isn't just a typo. This difference might actually be the key to understanding what really went down.
We're talking about the retrenchment of some RBC officers.
And the documents are fascinating. Right off the bat, there's this massive difference in the number of officers involved.
Yeah, between what the court officially recognized and what the State Police Association, the EPA, put forward.
It makes you wonder what's going on here. So our mission today is to figure out what might have caused this inflated number of officers.
We're going to be sifting through court documents, legal analyses, anything related to the EPA's involvement.
Trying to make sense of it all. Sounds like fun, right?
Definitely, just like a puzzle.
All right, let's jump right in. Let's start with the basics. How many officers were actually retrenched?
Okay, so the Court of Appeal of Trinidad and Tobago, in civil appeal now, P-258 of 2019, paragraph 3. It clearly states, quote, the dispute concerns the retrenchment of 14 estate constables.
Okay, so 14 officers, straight from the court. That seems pretty straightforward.
You didn't think so, right?
But then we look at what the State Police Association was saying, what they filed officially, and things get a bit murky.
Yeah, a bit.
Because according to our sources, the EPA, specifically their industrial relations officer, a guy named Harrison Thompson,
Harrison Thompson.
they reported a completely different number. They said 42 officers were part of this whole dispute.
42? Why?
And this number, this 42, it popped up everywhere. Filings with the Ministry of Labor case, STO 6 of 15, and even before the special tribunal.
So that's a jump of 28 people.
28, that's not a small difference.
Not at all. And the document, evidence of fabricated claims.pdf, strongly suggests this wasn't just a simple mistake or miscommunication.
So it wasn't like someone accidentally added a digit or something.
No, it seems much more deliberate than that. It points to the EPA, or at least Thompson, making this change unilaterally. Not all those extra 28 people even had formal retainer agreements.
You mean like officially tying them to this legal action?
Exactly. And, get this, not all of them were actually even terminated by the bank at the time.
Wait, seriously, so they weren't even part of the retrenchment?
It seems that way. And here's the kicker. A lot of those added names, it looks like they never even agreed to be part of this expanded claim.
Hold on, so the EPA just added them without their knowledge or consent?
That's what the evidence strongly indicates. It's like they puffed up the numbers almost out of thin air.
Wow, okay. So we've got the court recognizing 14 retrenched officers, but the EPA is claiming 42 are involved. This is a huge difference. What was the point? Was this just some messy paperwork, or is there a reason they might have inflated that number?
Well, looking at our sources, especially inflated numbers to justify hiring chancerychambers.pdf, it really seems like this was a strategic move, not just a mistake.
A strategy. Okay, I'm intrigued. So why would they inflate the number of officers involved? What could they possibly gain from that?
Well, think about it. A dispute with 42 people involved. That sounds way more serious than one with just 14.
Right, like it's a bigger problem, affecting more people, more impact.
Exactly. It creates this image of a huge, widespread issue. And that could make it easier to justify bringing in a big league legal team, like, say, Chancery Chambers.
Okay, I'm following. Chancery Chambers, they're the heavy hitters, right? Senior counsel, multiple junior attorneys.
That's right. And looking at things like the judicial review filings, Anthony Bullock from Chancery Chambers is specifically mentioned. Plus, Hackett's correspondence also confirms their involvement.
So they were definitely involved. But the thing is, they appear to have taken on the case pro bono, meaning they weren't charging for their services.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. It seems like they only offered to work pro bono after the case was framed as having this big national significance, which, could be linked to that larger number of claimants.
So the EPA makes the case look bigger, more important, maybe even more politically sensitive.
And suddenly, a prestigious firm like Chancery Chambers steps in, offering their services for free. Maybe for the publicity, the connections. Who knows, maybe even a better chance at future state contracts.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, by inflating those numbers, they might have completely changed the trajectory of the case.
Exactly. And it really highlights the power dynamics at play. It's not just about legal arguments, it's about perception, access, and influence.
It's like playing the game, almost.
You could say that. Now imagine if they had stuck with the original 14 officers. It likely wouldn't have gotten this much attention.
Probably would have been a more standard process, right?
Most likely. Maybe mediation resolution within the industrial court, all under normal redundancy laws. Probably wouldn't have even reached the level of judicial review, let alone the Privy Council.
Wow. So inflating the numbers might have been their ticket to the big leagues, legally speaking. But what about the consequences? Did this actually hurt anyone, or was it just about appearances?
Well, that's where it gets really concerning. Because according to evidence of fabricatedclaims.pdf, an RBC retrenchment case, claimant number discrepancy, the consequences were real. And they were bad. For one thing, it raises the issue of fraudulent misrepresentation to the Ministry of Labor.
That sounds serious.
It is. Submitting an inflated number of claimants in an official trade dispute filing. That's a huge misstatement of fact. It basically violates the whole process, how the ministry registers these things.
And it undermines trust in the system, right? Like if people can just lie about the basic facts.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the system. This move seems to have directly hurt the original 14 officers who were actually retrenched.
How so?
Well, their individual cases, their actual grievances, got buried under this mountain of fabricated claims. It's like, imagine trying to be heard in a room full of people all shouting random things. Your voice just gets lost.
It makes it harder to focus on the actual legitimate issues.
Exactly. Their individual situations, the specific details of their retrenchment.
Yeah.
It all got diluted, overshadowed by this narrative of a massive, widespread dismissal that wasn't entirely true.
It almost feels like those extra names were used as a shield or a smokescreen.
That's a good way to put it. And it had a real impact. In the Chain of Deception 1.pdf, there's this really powerful line. The original 14 officers were lost in the fiction and silenced by 28 shadows.
Wow, that's heady.
Yeah, it really drives home the human cost
Yeah.
of this manipulation.
So their individual circumstances couldn't be properly addressed because the whole process was built on this shaky foundation of inflated numbers.
Right. This misrepresentation messed with the legal framing of the entire case. It led to confusion, loss of clarity, and ultimately it contributed to the case getting dismissed on procedural grounds.
So they never even got a fair hearing, the original 14.
It seems that way. They were denied their right to due process because the entire legal battle was fought over this fictionalized version of events.
That's heartbreaking, and it also sounds like a major legal problem.
It is. This kind of conduct by the EPA and Thompson, it's what's called ultra-vires conduct, meaning they acted beyond their legal authority.
So the very organization supposed to be helping them actually might have hurt their chances.
That's the irony. This whole situation created grounds for judicial review, abuse of discretion, breach of duty to act fairly, serious procedural impropriety. It's all there.
And on top of that, all this back and forth, the confusion caused by the inflated numbers, it must have caused huge delays.
It did. Years of delay, in fact. And that's another serious problem. Obstruction of justice. It's called misfeasance. Improperly doing something that's actually lawful.
So they were allowed to file the claim, but the way they did it was wrong.
Exactly. And it's argued that this deliberate mischaracterization of the number of claimants messed everything up, caused confusion for years. And because of that, those 14 officers never got a timely and valid hearing. They were robbed of the chance to have their case judged on the actual facts.
Wow. So this wasn't just a minor error. This discrepancy really messed things up. The whole process was tainted right from the start.
That's exactly what the sources suggest. This wasn't just a small slip-up. This was deliberate misconduct. It throws the validity of the entire trade dispute certificate into question, and it casts serious doubt on everything the EPA filed. It's like building a house on a foundation of sand. The whole thing is unstable.
It makes you wonder, if they were willing to misrepresent something as basic as the number of people involved, what else might they have stretched the truth on?
That's a valid question. It really erodes trust, doesn't it?
Big time. It makes you question everything.
And speaking of questioning things, one of the documents, the Hackett Affidavits, Judicial Review Study Guide, talks about the limits of office copies of legal documents.
Office copies? What are those?
Basically, it's a copy of a document filed with the court, and it has a stamp from the court office of the Judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago proving that it was officially filed. But here's the thing. Just because something's been filed doesn't mean the court agrees with it or even that the content is true.
Oh, interesting. So it's just proof of filing, not proof of truth.
Exactly. Unless the original document itself was issued by the judiciary, like a court order or a judgment, an office copy doesn't guarantee the accuracy of what's inside. It just means someone submitted it.
Okay, that makes sense. So in this case, the EPA filed a document saying there were 42 officers involved.
But that doesn't automatically make it true. It just means they filed it.
It doesn't mean the court or anyone else actually checked those numbers and said, yep, this is accurate.
Precisely. It's like a library isn't responsible for the content of every book on its shelves, just for having them available.
So it's a good reminder to look beyond just the procedure, to dig deeper and verify the actual claims being made.
Especially when we're talking about something as important as people's livelihoods and their access to justice.
Absolutely. So what's happening now? What are those 14 officers doing to try to get justice?
Well, they're not giving up. They're seeking compensation, of course, for what they've been through, but they're also going further. They're claiming constitutional damages.
Constitutional damages? That sounds pretty serious.
It is. They're arguing that their fundamental rights were violated, the right to due process, to a fair hearing, all of that.
Because the whole process was tainted by those inflated numbers.
Exactly. And they're also pointing to the delay of justice, the years they've lost because of this mess. And on top of that, they're saying their own union, the EPA, committed procedural fraud by misrepresenting their case.
So they're saying their own representatives hurt them. That's, wow.
It's a pretty bold claim. But based on the evidence, it's understandable why they'd feel that way.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? We started by noticing this one little discrepancy, this difference in the number of officers. But it's turned into this whole tangled web of manipulation, legal maneuvering, and serious consequences.
It really highlights how important it is to get the facts straight, especially in legal matters. And it makes you think about the responsibility of organizations like the EPA to represent their members honestly and ethically.
To protect their members, not exploit them or use them for some other agenda.
Exactly. And for everyone listening, think about this. What happens when the very people you trust to represent you, to fight for your rights? What happens when they distort the truth for their own benefit? What does that say about the systems we rely on for fairness and justice?
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is, and it's something worth thinking about long after this deep dive is over, because it goes beyond just this one case. It speaks to the very foundation of trust and accountability in our institutions.
Big questions, no easy answers. But that's why we do these deep dives, right? To explore these complex issues and hopefully spark some important conversations.
Absolutely, because sometimes the most important stories are hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to connect the dots.
And to those 14 officers still fighting for justice, we see you, we hear you, and we'll be watching to see what happens next.
Stay tuned.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking the tough questions.
Because sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. And sometimes it's right there in the numbers.